But, big fella, I wanted to talk to you about the college football playoffs. Um, Miami versus Ohio State. We're going to get into your Georgia Bulldogs in just a second, but let's talk about Miami versus Ohio State. The Buckeyes coming into that game, they were like a 9.5 point favorite. Miami, look, I picked OSU to win this one, but man, I underestimated Miami. I mean, their pass rush, the way they went after Julian Sayed, he was sacked 5 times in that game. He threw 2 interceptions. One of them was a pick six. Ruben Bain is really making a strong, valid case for a top 5 pick in this year's NFL draft. I got to give a lot of credit to Mario Cristobal, the head coach of Miami. Carson Beck, your former Georgia Bulldog, he didn't have to be pretty. He just had to be good enough. Malachi Tony, I mean, the freshman, man, he has been doing his thing, man. But big fella, do you think Miami is back? Can they really win it all? Because you look at their defense, offensively, the question mark is still Carson Beck. But with this defense, I mean, you look at what you saw from them against Texas A&M and from Ohio State. And what you also seen from Ohio State these past couple of games, it's not the first time. Prior to that game against, I think, Indiana, they were sacked like, 5-6 times? They were sacked 5 times in that Big Ten championship game. And 5 times they were sacked in the Cotton Bowl. And it got so good. Look, you got to be hyped up as a U fan when Michael Irvin is pulling off his belt, BTA, belt to ass whooping. I mean, you got to be so ecstatic as a Miami fan. And shout out to the beautiful JoJo, who's a part of the wrestling, the Sports for You wrestling, and is also a U fan. Big fella, what were your thoughts on the game in Miami?
Oh man, Fletcher should get a lot of credit, the running backs, because they definitely know how to close out games. They definitely are the Mariano Rivera's of that team. They know how to close out games. The pass rush was something serious. That pass rush was special. And if you really look back on it, the cornerstones of great Miami teams have always been the defensive line. You can go all the way back to Ord Harris. You can go back to the late great Cortez Kennedy, Russell Maryland, the late great Jerome Brown, and also Colorado Buffs defensive line coach, the great Warren Sapp. So it's always Miami has always had a history of having a great defensive lineman, and it's just fortunate for them that they came through in the clutch at this point in time. When you look at back on the quarterback position at University of Miami as well, they've also had a history of great quarterbacks as well. And I think Carson Beck, although last night wasn't his greatest game, he did enough in order to put them in position in order to win the game. Now, is he going to go? Is he going to go down as Gino Torretta, Vinny Testaverde, Jim Kelly, or any of those guys like that?
Ja'Cory
Probably
Harris.
not. Yeah, Ja'Cory Harris, Ken Dorsey, any of those guys? No, he's not going to go down in history like even Cam Ward. But guess what? If they're able to win, he's going to be that $4 million that he just got paid is going to be real worth it. And look, I'm glad that he showed the world what he could do on the biggest stage. Last year, remember, he got, unfortunately, he got hurt in the SEC championship and ended up getting benched in favor of Gunnar Stockton. Unfortunately, we lost against Notre Dame last year, and that's when he transferred. And Carson Beck, he was able to get the last laugh and say, hey, I'm 1 game away from the national championship. As far as Mario Cristobal, he's tried to do something that only 2 other head coaches have done in the history of college football, and that is win a national championship with their alma mater. The only 2 coaches that have done that in the history of college football is Philip Farmer from the Tennessee Volunteers and Kirby Smart. So he's trying to do something that only 2 other coaches have done. And I'm glad that, look, I know I'm a diehard Georgia fan, but I grew up watching the University of Miami, watching those great players that came through there. It feels so good to see that although they have the present, that they haven't lost touch with their past. It feels good to see Andre Johnson on the sideline. It feels good to see Michael Irvin on the sideline.
Ray
It feels
Lewis.
good to be Ray Lewis on the sideline. It feels so good to see the alumni that made us all pay attention to college football growing up on that sideline as they are trying to win a national championship, something that they haven't done for the last 25 years since 2001 with that magnificent team that they had. That, in my humble opinion, is the greatest team of all time. It's them one, and then that 2019 LSU team at number 2. Well, you can put them both 1 and 1A, but you can't go wrong with either one. But it feels good to see the U back. If you really want me to be honest with you, they were back when they made the playoffs. It had been a long time since they've been on the big stage. They were back once they did that. They were on the big stage. And once they were able to pull out a win in that first round and then go into the second round and put a whooping and avenge that 2003 loss avenge that 2003 loss
Against
against the
OSU.
Ohio State Buckeyes, which I watched that national championship game. That was a bad call. But, as we all say as athletes, you cannot leave it in the officials' hands. It felt good to see them there. And I will say, look, it's all about the U. Hell of a job, man. And I can't wait to see what they're going to do against Ole Miss. I can't wait to see what they're going to do against Ole Miss and how they're going to be able to contain Trinidad
Chambers.
Yes,
Who, by the way, had a magnificent game last night against Georgia. And just like, sorry to steal your thunder, big fella, but we talk about Miami being the great narrative. I think Ole Miss has a better chance of being the better narrative considering the timing of Lane Kiffin departing Ole Miss to join LSU. And although it's hurting him, it's not hurting his pockets because the past 2 games he's received $250,000. Now they won against Tulane. He was able to get $250,000. And in yesterday's game against UGA, he was able to collect another $250,000. And I love what I'm seeing from Ole Miss. And they won that game, champ. I hate to bring it up to you. I know you were a Georgia Bulldogs fan. You and we had a conversation right after the game. You're disappointed, but in actuality, you're not really all that mad because you weren't expecting that much. But I said, champ, look, this is UGA. Alabama, and we'll talk about them later on in the show. You beat Alabama in the SEC championship game. The goal is to win championships. Now that you already got that big monkey off your back, finally winning your first national championship since 1980. Okay. Now, Kirby Smart, this was an opportunity for you to solidify as one of the greatest head coaches in college football. And he's definitely he's a great coach, no question about it. Now, we could look at it and you can say, well, the offense hasn't been the same since Todd Monken has departed from UGA and joined as the offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. Mike Bobo, his play calling, it's been in question. And we can also look at the defense, champ. But Ole Miss, I think they have a greater chance. I mean, we talk about Indiana with Kurt Cignetti, how he has transformed that program. I think they spent, $60 million as far as trying to acquire talent. And look what the narrative he's done with Fernando Mendoza, winning the Heisman Trophy, becoming the first Cuban to win the Heisman Trophy. You look at Miami with their dominant defense led by Ruben Bain. You look at a lot of great narratives, but I think Ole Miss, man, if they win a national championship, given the circumstances, given how Lane Kiffin left, I think that's a bigger narrative. Even though it's not hurting Lane Kiffin's pockets, it's actually helping him because he's getting more money, even though he's with a different program. But it adds tremendous pressure on him because, after all, he's still with the SEC. And he has to deal with that type of competition. And look, we've seen Lane Kiffin depart. I mean, he was there in Tennessee after his time in Oakland. He went to USC. He didn't really make that much of a difference. Okay, FAU. No one FAU, you had to build them from the ground up. You gave them credibility. You gave them some hope, some optimism. then Ole Miss. You did a very good job during your time in Ole Miss based on the record, but the fact of the matter is you left. And what's shocking is, Chad, Ole Miss, they were able to beat Georgia without him. No Lane Kiffin whatsoever. The interim head coach. I mean, and look, Ole Miss, I don't know if he's going to get an opportunity to be a head coach for Ole Miss. Maybe they're going to Pete Golden, the defensive coordinator, the former defensive coordinator. What he has done for Ole Miss in these past couple of games since Lane Kiffin's departure, for them to still be able to still keep their playoff hopes alive, and for them to go this far, that is saying something. And that's what Ole Miss hoped once they brought in Lane Kiffin. So, what are your thoughts about the Ole Miss Georgia game?
Number one, congratulations to Ole Miss, bring it back home for the South and the SEC. I'm getting real sick and tired of hearing about the Big Ten and all these other conferences. Show them who we are down south. Show them who we are down south. So that's all I have to say about Ole Miss. But Trinidad Chambliss, talk about a true underdog story. He was just playing Division II football last year.
He was.
Yes, he was playing Division II football last year. And he came in this year up until, I think, week 1, and he thought he was going to be the backup. Injuries happened, and he was thrust into the spotlight. He's big, he's fast, and he is amazing. He is amazing. And when you think about
You saw that scramble? You saw that pitch pass that he made?
We had him. We had him.
And he had to go around. It looked like Johnny Manziel out there.
Yeah. A little mixture of Cam Newton, Johnny Manziel-esque. Like I said, the guy's huge. But I enjoyed seeing that, man. That's what SEC football is all about. And this win right here, Ole Miss's run to the college football playoff. I don't know if people remember this or not. I compare it to how Michigan back in 1989 was able to go to the national championship and win it at the end of the regular season after Bill Frater left in order to take the head coaching job at the University of Arizona. A lot of people don't know that right before the Fab Five, that Coach Fisher, he was not actually the coach; he was the assistant. Bill Frater took a head coaching job in Arizona, and they said he couldn't. They didn't allow Bill Frater to coach throughout the NCAA tournament, and he was able to win the national championship. And then right after the national championship, then he was able to recruit a lot of guys because as we all know, winning brings about recruits. Winning brings about recruits. NIL money does too, if you can write a big old check. But winning, if I know I can go somewhere and win and the scouts are going to notice me, that's what brings about recruits. And that is similar to what the coach at Ole Miss is doing now. And I mean, to go not just through Tulane, but to go through Georgia, University of Georgia, who was been on fire since that loss against Alabama earlier in the season. That's flat out, and did dominated Alabama in the SEC championship. Dominated them. And they gave us a run for our money. We left too many plays on the table. There was 2 different times where we were in the Ole Miss's territory and we came away with nothing. It was too many. We had a chance in the first half in order to put it out of reach. Unfortunately, we did not. And we didn't execute the way we were supposed to. Gave up some big plays, and we just did not capitalize. And we have to do a better job of that next year. Not to mention Nathan Frazier. I think that loss was huge going down the stretch. And I think that loss to me with Nathan Frazier was huge. I don't know if he's going to be back next year. If I'm him, I'm taking my talents to the pros. And I will say thank you to Nathan Frazier. You was able to bring a spark to that offense like we haven't seen in a good while. So thank you to Nathan Frazier. You gave it all you had. But like I stated, this Ole Miss team is equivalent to what the Michigan Steve Fisher team with Glenn Rice, by the way, was back in 1989. Bill Frieder, he left in order to take the University of Arizona's job, and Steve Fisher was able to win his first national championship before he was able to recruit the Fab Five. You have to ask yourself this: can they become a powerhouse if they're able to win a national championship this year? Because guess what? Like I stated, winning brings in recruits. And if you're able to sell somebody on the fact that you are a winner, they're not going to have a problem with not going to one of the bigger programs in order to go to Oxford. And plus, it's in the SEC. You know you're going to be on TV every single week. You know that the NFL scouts are going to be there when you play the big timers like Alabama, when you play the big timers like Georgia. And look, my hat goes off to that team. As the great Kirby Smart said, we were outcoached, we were outplayed, and we were out executed. But that's what college football is all about. As far as my Georgia Bulldogs, disappointment, yeah, but a lot of people at the beginning of the season didn't have us going anywhere. It was surprising to a lot of people that we even made the playoffs and had as great of a record that we did. I mean, the defense is not as good as what they was as far as the defensive line is concerned as it was back in 2021, 2022. Those dominant defenses that we once had are gone. The offense is a hell of a lot more high powered and a hell of a lot more reliant on the offenses. And like I stated, when you're not as good as you used to be, you have to execute on every single down. Am I disappointed? A little bit. But like I said last night in the conversation that we had, look, I remember there was a time when we weren't in contention for anything. We knew we were going to a bowl game, but the dream was to always be in the Natty. That was the dream, was to always be in the Natty. And the fact that we won two during the Kirby Smart era, we're able to win SEC championship and able to be in the conversation, that's amazing. And I don't want to act like a spoiled fan. You know, the worst thing you could do as a fan is get a little bit too spoiled. And I took my hat off to Kirby Smart. We was able to come out, get the monkey off our back, beat Alabama in the SEC championship. Finally, we had never done that in the history of our program. And we was able to do a lot of great things this year. Gunnar Stockton was a Heisman candidate. Zachariah Branch was on fire. I hate that we couldn't do more. I think that Zachariah Branch is going to be a hell of a receiver once he goes to the NFL. Atlanta Falcons, I hope you were watching. Need somebody to go along with Drake London. But I can't be mad at the guys for the magnificent effort that they put on this season. And it's very damn hard, as you saw in the SEC championship, in order to beat a team twice, especially when that team is not the same team that you faced before. Different head coach, different philosophy, different everything. And for you to put up the fight that you did, that took a lot of guts. So shout out to my Georgia Bulldogs. We'll be back again next year, hopefully stronger than ever. I don't know what's going to happen with Gunnar Stockton, or if he's going to leave or he's going to come back for year 5.
You may have to try to convince yourself to get Dylan Raiola.
Either that or the quarterback from Florida. I think
DJ Lagway?
Yeah, DJ Lagway, I think.
I prefer Raiola.
Yeah, but
no, I mean I'm sorry, Champ, but I can't ignore DJ's performance this year. I had a little bit more expectations for DJ this season, and he didn't perform well, particularly in that LSU game, in which he threw 5 interceptions. But my thing is, Champ, yes, I understand you're disappointed, and you didn't think Georgia had much. Most people didn't have many expectations for Georgia to go that far, but given the fact that Nick Saban is no longer there, since it's Alabama, it really should be Georgia's to lose in the SEC. And we'll get into Alabama sooner. But when I look at Kirby Smart, who's the best coach in that conference? Him.
Kirby Smart, yeah.
You look at the talent, yes. We look at wide receiver U, Ohio State, yes. LSU, yes. Alabama, yes. But we know Georgia provides running back U, James Cook, Nick Chubb, Todd Gurley, Herschel Walker, Sony Michel. Georgia has provided a long list of excellent running backs. Some of them, a lot of them have made Pro Bowls. Some, if not few of them, may have a chance to actually be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Terrell Davis, yeah.
Yes, Terrell Davis. Of course, won the MVP during the 97 season when they beat the Green Bay Packers to win the Super Bowl. I think, Champ, I expected more from Georgia because what's the excuse? Ole Miss, no Lane Kiffin. Yes, I understand. I mean, you kind of felt like, okay, we beat them the first time. It wouldn't be a surprise if we beat them again. But I think for Georgia, I mean, the fumble by Gunnar Stockton and how Ole Miss was able to capitalize off of it. I think that's what also hurt them. So they're going to have to go back to running a more style offense, a more balanced offense. Either they're going to have to improve on the offense or the defense, because you can't expect both ends of the football field to be all-time great. It's going to be hard. I just think they need to do a better job with the offense. And Mike Bobo, is it time for him to go?
Yes, I will say yes, but the thing is, our offense was a hell of a lot better than it was last year, partly because he unleashed the reins for Gunnar Stockton.
Yeah, he finally got Gunnar Stockton out of his comfort shadow, and he decided to let Gunnar Stockton sling it. So I think if you get a type of quarterback, I don't know if they're going to keep Gunnar Stockton. I think, what is he, a sophomore, junior?
No, he's a senior. But
he's a senior.
So he's going to be if he comes back.
Right. But if he moves on, I think you should get yourself a quarterback that you can unleash. And one thing is, with Georgia, they're going to get big-time recruits.
Yeah.
They're still going to get their recruits. And again, a lot of them come from the South. A lot of them, whether Georgia, whether Cartersville, Atlanta, anywhere around that Georgia or Texas area, Florida area, they want to come play in the SEC. I think for Ole Miss, though, as far as with the recruits, who knows? Could they be convinced to stay with Ole Miss, given the fact that Lane Kiffin has went to LSU, and LSU got money, mad money. Well, like, how much money that they're gonna give Lane Kiffin in order for him to recruit all that? There you go.
25 million big ones.
So unless Ole Miss has that type of money, now if they could win, maybe perhaps, but it's going to be hard to do that. So and there you go. And then with Alabama, you said it before with Kalen DeBoer, which we will get into. Champ, I picked Alabama to win. I did not expect this. 17 carries for 23 yards. Their offense ran. Just as bad as the SEC championship game against your Georgia Bulldogs. And Kalen DeBoer, I didn't really watch the game. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to use more of your Prime Video account or whatever it is that you're using to watch ESPN. But why did you decide to go for it that early on fourth down?
Panic.
Panic, just like you panicking in that Super Bowl against the Patriots, because that's what it looked. Because that's what it looked like.
Basically.
And Indiana, we talk about Fernando Mendoza, we talk about Curt Cignetti. Their defense, champ, it doesn't get enough credit. I mean, look what they did in the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State. To hold that offense of Alabama to just 3 points. 3 points. I mean, it's astounding. Was I surprised Indiana won, champ? Not necessarily. I'm more astonished how they won. Alabama had no chance. In the words of Vince McMahon, no chance in hell. They got their ass whooped. Tyler Simpson had to be yanked out of the game due to injury.
Cracked ribs.
Fractured.
Yep. Cracked ribs.
Fernando Mendoza solidified his case on being the number 1 overall pick. I mean, and he didn't even have to put up great or astronomical numbers, but some of them throws that he was making. Can we please stop saying that that Indiana, they're not a good enough team, they haven't beaten competition? Can we please stop saying that about them? Curt Cignetti, the job that he has done transforming that program, because again, when you think of Indiana, you think of it as, of course, basketball. That's like basketball U. There's 2 states you think of in the U.S. when you think of basketball. Well, actually 3. New York, of course, because of Rucker Park, all the other great street ball. Indiana and North Carolina. Now, this is going, Indiana, their football days Hasn't been like that since Peyton Manning, the Dwight Freeney days, and then of course to a lesser extent Andrew Luck.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to tip your hat off to Kurt Signetti. I mean, people could say whatever they want, SEC bias, or whatever. And I do the podcast with the Ball Hawk Sports Talk with my man Big Flo and B Brown ESQ. I want your thoughts on this game, champ. And do you think, considering what you've seen from the college football playoffs, do you think teams like Notre Dame should have made the playoffs?
Gonna be real. Yes. And the thing is, I said it before. I never forget, people can talk about, oh, yeah, that was a 14 playoff, but walk with it. When we, coming off of back-to-back national championships, got eliminated in that SEC championship, when we lost to Alabama, we got ousted. We couldn't defend our title. And I said it before, I said it again. That was fair. That was fair.
The 2023 SEC championship game.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
That was fair. And sometimes it doesn't matter. And sometimes it's not you losing, it's how you lost. They got dominated. They got dominated in that game. So yes, I would be pissed if I were Notre Dame that a team like Alabama got dominated and their reward was getting into the college football playoffs, and fortunately they was able to get some get back against the Sooners in the first round, but unfortunately in the second round, hey, you proved that you wasn't that guy. So yeah, I understand why.
That also pisses me off because, sorry to cut you off, Chad, because see, that just tells you how bad Alabama is, and that just tells you how unfortunate for OU, because they seem to. You said yourself, you couldn't have said it any better. They find a way to blow big leads.
Yeah,
they are like the Atlanta Falcons of college football, especially come playoff time.
Yeah, and look, Bama. This is not Bama football, not the Bama that we used to seeing. Even when we had, and people want to talk about Nick Saban. This is not even the ball that we seen when Gene Stallings was there, when Faust was there, when any of those guys were there. So this is not the Alabama ball we're accustomed to seeing. Kellen DeVore has to get it right, has to get the running game right, has to get the defense right, has to get a lot of things corrected when it comes to the Alabama football program. Unfortunately, he didn't have it this year. Going to be interesting to see if he's on the hot seat next year, because he got in really by the luck of the draw. The thing is, if Alabama were not in the SEC, would they have gotten in? No, because the thing is, SEC bias. I'm an SEC guy. You see the Georgia stuff right behind me. You see it right behind me, right there. But there's a lot of bias when it comes to the SEC, because guess what? The first thing they're going to do as far as college football playoff committee is they're going to play that strength of schedule card. Okay, you might have the better record, Notre Dame, but we have the better strength of schedule, that being Alabama. So
shout out to John Watson.
Yes, indeed. Sports for You podcast and Nick Freeze, all the guys over there. So,
but yeah, you make a very valid point, big fella, because if Alabama were in the ACC or a lesser tier conference in the SEC team, no, I don't believe they would have gotten in. Some people
SEC bias. It was very much SEC bias, and
imagine if Notre Dame had made it to if they were in a conference team. Who knows?
Yeah,
I don't know if they would. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I believe they're trying to bully Notre Dame into going into a conference. I really do, because they're getting tired of them getting all that money to themselves. Because if they win, they get all that money to themselves. Interesting thing about Miami, the ACC was supposed to get $14 million. The ACC unanimously, decided to give that $14 million to Miami. But, when Notre Dame makes it to it, they get $32 million. That's Notre Dame's $32 million. It's all about money. You got to ask yourself this with Alabama. If they wasn't one of the most watched teams in the country, would they have gotten in there? Probably not. So they had two things going on for them. They had the SEC bias, the strength of schedule,
Ratings.
and then the ratings. Because you best believe the College Football Playoff Committee are looking at those ratings. I don't care what they say. We're not looking at TV ratings. You're a darn liar. We know you're looking at those ratings to see how you could draw that money. So don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining because I know you just pissed on my head. So let's just keep it all the way above. You put Alabama in there because of SEC bias, and I'm an SEC guy. I am an SEC guy. You see what's in the background? Georgia. And you put them in there because of SEC bias, and you put them in there because of ratings. And guess what? They got off to a great start. But once you face some of these big time teams, then guess what? You face the consequences of being humiliated at a certain point. And there's got to be a lot done about the college football playoff. They have to get in some people who are more unbiased. I don't know how they're going to do it. I think they should get the writers involved in a little bit more or something of that nature. Look at the AP polls and go by that or something, because there's a lot of injustices that have been going on. And like I stated, nobody enjoys seeing SEC teams in the playoffs more than me. I'm a Southern guy. But when you go down the line, Tennessee was not supposed to be there last year. Alabama was supposed to be there this year. A lot of SEC teams were not supposed to be in the college football playoff these past couple of years, but because they were in the SEC, they got a shot. So there has to be a more unbiased committee put together that's not looking at TV ratings, that's not looking at, the SEC and how much they're drawing as far as, ratings is concerned. There has to be more unbiasedness in that room as far as college football playoff committee is concerned. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of this. And we got to acknowledge this. SEC, I love the South. Once again, I hate to be like a broken record, but we are not the conference that we once was.
Right.
We're not. So all of that strength of schedule bull jive needs to go out of the window. We are one step below. We're one step below the Big Ten at this point, and we're only 2 steps from being the ACC at this point if we don't get it together. Because Kalen DeVore, he's not the superstar coach that we thought he was going to be. There's only really 3 superstar coaches that are in the SEC right now. Well, 2, and that's Lane Kiffin and Kirby Smart. That's it.
Although I do think the head coach from A&M, although despite the loss against Miami, he has done a very good job turning around that program, since we all thought it was supposed to be Jimbo Fisher. After all, A&M paid Jimbo Fisher a shit ton of money, in which he didn't live up to, Champ. But, Champ, just to regurgitate for those regarding Notre Dame ratings, for those who may argue that it wasn't due to ratings of Notre Dame, despite their 10-2 record, according to Nielsen, it didn't rank among the top 10 most watched college football teams this season. Their average viewing audience of over 3.9 million viewers ranks them number 15th behind Florida, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Florida State. And ahead are Vanderbilt, Missouri, Penn State, and Miami. The most watched team was Alabama, averaging more than double Notre Dame's viewers at 8.4 million. Over 8.4 million, followed by Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. Overall, SEC teams accounted for 4 to 5 most watched schools and 8 of the top 10. According to Nielsen, Notre Dame played in only one of the top 20 most watched college football games this season. It drew a season high of 10.8 million viewers versus Miami for the season opener on August 31st. Ironically, the committee pointed to that 27-24 road loss to the Hurricanes as the reason the Irish didn't make the playoff cut. Even Notre Dame's 34-23 victory over rival USC on October 18th didn't pop a big number. NBC's broadcast averaged a little less than 3 million, trailing 3 SEC matchups on ABC. Over 6 million for Ole Miss versus Georgia, nearly 5 million for Alabama, Tennessee, and 3.8 for LSU versus Vanderbilt. And to use your analogy, to quote the great Chris Jericho, you don't have to look, style. Hey, I mean, it's kind of like getting it's trying to get a woman. She ain't got the brains nor the looks. Therefore, all you coming up with is shit.
You ain't got the brains for it. You ain't got the look for it. And most of all, you ain't got the legs for it. So yeah, but those ratings that just Alabama being the highest rated team as far as TV ratings in there, you gonna tell me, oh yeah, that had nothing to do with it. You're a freaking liar.
It did.
You're a freaking liar.
Of course it did, Champ. I just think I don't know what Notre Dame is going to do, but the good thing they got for them moving forward is that Marcus Freeman is here to stay.
Yeah,
because
they have that clause with the College Football Playoff Committee. If they rank top 12, they can they're automatically in a playoff bid. Now I don't know how beneficial that's going to be, considering that you have to play Southern Polytech every other week next year. But because if you come out and you lose one game, only thing they're going to do is put you number 13, and then you still not going to make it. So yeah, that's a double-edged sword that they just signed.
Well, I think the NBC ratings, and obviously with the SEC, it definitely does help that ESPN, ABC, Walt Disney is covering the SEC. So that definitely does add on to it as well.
Yes, indeed.
So you can say, hey, if Notre Dame, perhaps if they join a conference, who knows? But obviously with the SEC, yes, it's not as dominant as it was in the 2010s or even in the early 2000s, champ. Because you had a lot of teams at that time. You had Ole Miss, you had Tennessee. I mean, Nick Saban, when he was there at LSU, Florida in the glory days. So there was a lot more excitement in the SEC. It's just that with the Big Ten now, you look at Oregon, what they've done with Dan Flanning, who's done an excellent job as the head coach. You look at Ohio State, Ryan Day finally won a national championship. He got the big monkey off his back. And look at their wide receiver, look at the amount of talent that they have. And then Indiana, Kurt Cignetti. All these, with Cignetti and them, they're assistants, remember, champ, of Saban.
Yeah. That's why he's the Bill Walsh of college football. Because if you remember, Bill Walsh's influence is being felt even now. Why? Because John Harbaugh is a protege of Andy Reid. Andy Reid was a protege of Mike Holmgren, who was a protege of Bill Walsh. And George Pieper. And that just goes to show you why Nick Saban is the greatest college coach of all time. You feel his impact to this day with his staff. And his staff has spit off and won championship, has spit off and done a lot of great things. Granted, we can say all we want to about Lane Kiffin, but give him all the credit in the world for putting together this team. You got to give him all the credit in the world for putting together this team and going into the transfer portal, recruiting like you need to in order to bring something special to Oxford that hasn't been there since Patrick Willis and Eli Manning. So you got to give him a lot of credit where credit is due. So to see all of your assistants, all the way down to your graduate assistant. Remember, Dan Lanning was a graduate assistant on Nick Saban's staff. He was a graduate assistant. So to see all the way down from your defensive coordinator, Kirby Smart, go back to back, to see Lane Kiffin, Bill Ole Miss,
Dan Lanning, Mario Cristobal, Kirby Smart, Pete Golding,
Kurt Cignetti. Came in here and turned the Indiana Hoosiers from a basketball school to a football school almost overnight. And then won at James Madison. Won at not one school, but two different schools. So your impact is being felt to this day, much like Bill Walsh. I understand that people are going to say, well, what about Bill Belichick? You can't put Bill Belichick as far as the pro level on Nick Saban's level. Why? Because the thing is this. Bill Belichick was the greatest coach of all time, but his staff
coaching tree.
was
I
a
mean, you
flop.
look from I mean, the only one that was decent or good or solid was Bill O'Brien. But if you look at it, the Josh McDaniels, the Charlie Weisses at Notre Dame, the Romeo Crennels, I mean, Brian Flores. Not to Brian Flores' credit, I think he did a solid job during his last couple of years in Miami. I don't think he'll ever be a head coach again. Perhaps a DC. Hey, Dallas, you may want to look at him for a DC. Or if you're a team that with serious playoff contentions, you may want to bring him onto the squad. But I think but Nick Saban, obviously his coaching staff is substantially better, champ, compared to Bill Belichick's coaching staff. And I think too many times the reason why Belichick's coaching staff hasn't worked out is because they're trying to replicate Belichick. Nah, you have to try to do things your own way. Even though you've learned a lot from the great Bill Belichick or from the great head coach, you have to create your own name. You have to do things your own way. You have to forge your own path. So that's what you're going to have to do. But it's great, though. I mean, from Dan Flanning, Mario Cristobal, Pete Golden, all these guys now, they're in the college football playoffs. And it just tells you Nick Saban and his impact.
Yes, indeed.
So it definitely does, man. Oregon, they beat Texas Tech 23-0. I expected Oregon to win that one. I think with Texas Tech, I didn't have much expectations for Texas Tech, champ, because of the conference, the competition. I knew that they were going to produce points, but eventually they were going up against Oregon's defense and the Big 12. Do you really think of them as far as defense is concerned?
No.
No.
The only time I ever thought of them as far as defense was concerned was when Yo Sooners had Gerald McCoy back in the day. That was it. But they had a couple of good defenses under Bob Stoops as well. But no. And plus, the Big 10, the Big 12 is not even the Big 12 anymore. No Texas, no Oklahoma. So you're not matching wits with a lot of superstar coaches. You basically going out there airing it out like a Steelers fan every other play and, hoping you get the ball last. That's just being honest with
There you go, man. There you go. But man, let's do our picks for the college football. Miami versus Ole Miss. I have Miami. If they could now, they're going up against a high-powered offense in Ole Miss. They went up against a high-powered offense in Ohio State, and they were able to get Julian Sayin 5 times. Now, I don't anticipate Trinidad Chambers to have another great performance like he did against Georgia. But I do think Miami, if Carson Beck can just manage the game, and with the running back, as you mentioned, from Miami, and if Malachi Tony can do something, I got Miami win this one 24-20.
Shout out to Uncle Luke. It's all about Miami. The U. It's all about the U. Go ahead, bring it on home to the U. I couldn't be happier, man. Seeing Uncle Luke and Michael Irvin and those guys, man. Like I said, I'm a home. I bleed red and black, but I grew up watching the University of Miami every single weekend, man. And I watched them just like I did my Georgia Bulldogs, man. So seeing him in the national championship, seeing them on the verge of another national championship with a lot of the great players that they have, I only wish that they could have played my Georgia Bulldogs. That's always been my dream, to see the University of Miami and Georgia play. But since that won't happen, I'd love to see the University of Miami win another one. And for Mario Cristobal to bring glory back to his alma mater.
You got Oregon versus Indiana, the rematch, because remember, Indiana faced Oregon at Oregon, and they won that one. Indiana's a 4-point favorite. I'm going to go with Oregon.
Lanning will not beat Signetti in this game.
Why is that?
Lanning, Oregon is going to give up at least 2 big games every single year. They're not going to be able to win the big one. It's the curse. They're cursed. And I believe that curse has followed. It went from Chip Kelly and it's with Dan Lanning right now. They got the speed, they got the talent, they got the know-how, but they're gonna lose the big one when it matters the most. And this is gonna be their big one. And that being with Kurt Signetti. The Cinderella story in Indiana will continue after next week.
And if they beat Indiana, how shocked would you be?
Very shocked.
Given how clutch,
I'll take a shot of
Indiana
Fireball.
has been.
I'll take a shot of Fireball live on the Sports PSP podcast, man. So yeah.
I don't know if you want to start the new year. Drinking.
Well, I cut my drink about 75% last year. I only had like 1 glass of champagne for New Year. That's saying a lot, considering that back in my heyday, it was 3 bottles of Ciroc a week. So
God
yeah.
damn.
Yeah, bro. Hey man, Army dudes, we can drink, bro. I'm just being real. Army dudes, we can drink. So hey, look at your face, bro. Those Army dudes, we can drink. So yeah. That's
the army people, they love to drink, they love to eat, and just like you, they love them wags.
Yeah. So that's all it really is. So yeah, man, those Army dudes, we can drink. That was before we went to the club. But yeah, man. I'm hoping that this Cinderella story continues, man.
Is it because of Signetti and Mendoza? Because of Mendoza coming from a school like Cal Berkeley, transforming there. He's got a little brother, and I think it's Alberto, who's going to be the guy to take over him while Fernando is going to enter the NFL draft. Is it because of Signetti and how much impact he has made with Indiana, or because of Indiana in general, because how they're now more of football? They're still basketball, though, because, of course, historically, and we can't disregard the Fever with Caitlin Clark and the rest of the other great players on the Indiana Fever team. Indiana is a great narrative.
Yeah. But
I just want to say Oregon because of our guy Brandon from the block.
Yeah. Yeah, Brandon, my twin brother. So I'll say this.
Twin brother? I mean, you look more like his uncle.
Yeah. But I'll say this. I love the Cinderella story. A lot of dynasties throughout college football history started with Cinderella stories. A lot of dominant programs started with Cinderella story. Ironically, the story that I'm about to tell you involves another team in the college football playoffs. I never forget Howard Snellenberger when he was at the University of Miami, when he became the coach after he left Don Shula and the Miami Dolphins, coached under Bear Bryant, coached under George Allen, coached under all of those great coaches. And he finally went to the University of Miami in order to win their first national championship 5 years later. It took Kurt Signetti half that time in order to do so in a blood and guts conference like the Big Ten. He had to go through Oregon. He had to go through Ohio State. He had to go through a lot of those great teams. And so for him to do that in less than 2 years and have them in prime position in order to get to a national championship, I would love to see that happen in order for a Cinderella team, not just for this year either. I would love for that to set the tone for more recruits to go to Indiana and say, hey, you see what they building up there? Just like I said, much like they did at University of Miami when Howard Stellenberger won his first national championship. That kicked off what we saw with Miami to this day. So I would love to see Kurt Signetti, a Cinderella, and this is why we wanted the college football playoffs. This is why. We wanted to see a Cinderella team come out of nowhere last 2 years and win something. That's what we wanted to see. That's why we made the college football playoff. That's why it was incepted. So we could see something like that. That is why it was invented. And that's why it was extended to 12 teams.
But
And I think,
hopefully it'll probably be extended by 16 sooner than later.
no.
No, I'm afraid so, champ. I'm afraid so. Because again, a lot of these teams, they're complaining. My thing is, look, win. As you said it before, don't let the refs determine it. Don't let the committee determine it. Win. But I'm
Exactly.
afraid they're gonna incorporate politics, and they're gonna complain. And bottom line, they're gonna complain. They're gonna complain. They're gonna incorporate politics, and they're gonna whine and cry, and they're going to get us to be convinced to create a new college football committee.
Again, they should keep it just like. And if they do that, I'm gonna just be real. If they do that, eliminate all the other bowl games.
Well, at this point, do you even watch the bowl games like you used to?
I watch them because I love football. Hell, I watch the Division III ball games. I watch the Division III ball game. I love football just that much. If I could, I would watch the JUCO programs. I love football just that much.
But the average casual,
that's
no.
what I was getting at. The casual fan is not going to watch that shit. Excuse me. Sorry. They're not going to watch that.
It's fine. It's fine.
So they're not watching the bowl game. I remember there was, look, I'll never forget when not Nick Saban, excuse me. I'll never forget when Bobby Bowden and Joe Paterno, God rest both their souls at this point, faced each other in the Blockbuster Bowl. And it was just a shootout. I never forget that. I mean, I remember bowl games were a huge deal outside of the national championship, especially when you had a New Year's Eve or a New Year's Day bowl. If you played in like the Music City Bowl, that was considered, you made it to a bowl, but that was kind of a failure. But once you made it to one of them big time bowl games, like the Fiesta Bowl, the Orange Bowl, one of those BCS bowls, those bowl championship series bowls, that meant a lot. It doesn't mean as much as it does now. Now, I understand they're not going to ever get rid of those bowls because that means money for sponsors and stuff like that. I understand that. But if you're going to extend the team to 16 teams, it's going to make wins in the regular season mean not as much. When you had 4 teams in the college football playoff, every win mattered. When you had the BCS, every damn win mattered. When you have 12 teams now, every win still matters. Nobody wants to see a 4-win team sneak into the college football playoff because you can best believe that's going to happen. And then somebody else. And the thing is, it's not going to solve anything. You juicing it up. You really think, not you, PSP per se, but do people really think that implementing a 16-team college football playoff is going to stop teams from complaining? No, it's not. You're going to have people complaining every single year. And look, you've had plenty of teams that were deserving. Like I said, I go back to when my Georgia Bulldogs, 2023, only lost 1 game. It was the SEC title. When we lost, we took it on the chin. And, we took it on the chin, took it like a man, and we played Florida State in the ball game.
But that's huge.
Even Florida State.
But Chip,
Florida State got cheated that year.
I know, but that's
and they still played the bowl game.
But that's you, big fella. Notre Dame, they missed the college football playoffs and refused to enter a bowl game.
And you should have won and beat Miami.
Not just Miami, Texas A&M. Let's not forget they lost to Texas A&M the following week.
You should have beaten those teams. And as you saw, head-to-head matters. And as you're seeing right now, they let the right team in there as far as letting Miami in there. I don't know if Notre Dame could have beaten those teams.
I think they're complaining because they look at the fact that James Madison and Tulane got in, and we saw Tulane face Ole Miss. It's not the first time that these two teams have faced each other. And so I can understand that from Notre Dame's standpoint. But the thing is, amongst the competition, Miami and A&M was your toughest test. Although people will look at it and say, well, what about our rivalry against USC? But my thing is, it was early in the season. You did lose to them on the road and at home. Now, it damn sure didn't help that ratings didn't go to your favor. As I mentioned, you want me to read them again? Because I can read the ratings again.
I mean, they number 15. I mean,
and you mentioned before their competition next year.
You're not gonna get into a bowl game or the college football playoff where you're playing Southern Polytech every year.
So you have to be able to win against top tier teams.
I'm not telling you to go to a conference because guess what? Look, if I'm Notre Dame, I'm all for it. You're not finna freaking bully me into joining a conference. You're not finna bully me.
But at the same time,
if you're going to sit around here and scream and kick about not being in the college football playoff, then you need to go around. Here's what I would do if I'm Notre Dame. I am not ducking the smoke. I'm redoing my schedule. I'm calling around to every school. I'm playing 2 schools from the Big 12, playing 2 schools from the Big 10, playing 2 schools from the SEC, 2 schools from the ACC. That's what you do. You can't duck the smoke. Don't duck the smoke. That way, when they bring up strength of schedule again next year, boom, you got the strength of schedule, even if you lose a couple of games.
No, unless you're the president, but go ahead. And listen, just because it's the new year, I will not hesitate to criticize him when necessary. That's why you had to flip the hat.
We're going to have to put the hat to the front on now.
But let's get into I would love to see Miami versus Oregon. I would like to see Miami versus Indiana. So either way, but I wouldn't mind Ole Miss winning it all because I would love to see them be able to capture a national championship without Lane Kiffin. This puts Lane Kiffin even more on the hot seat. And when you look at LSU with the money that they should receive, $25 million. So if you're Lane Kiffin and you are an offensive-minded type of guy, you know how to generate offense. And after all, LSU is wide receiver U. And look at the quarterbacks that have come recently: Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels. So I think if you're Lane Kiffin, you better do something because again, you're still in the SEC. It's not like you're going to the ACC or some weak conference where you're turning something out of nothing.
Yeah.
So you're under the hot seat, man.